I think overall, I pose this question on numbers on the board, but y'all know numbers on the board a lot of the times on our shorter episodes, I'm more of a mediator and a host and a guy that would give like a full-fledged opinion. So one of the questions I asked the guys, like, how would you grade the 2026 NBA trade deadline? So a few of the guys, like, I'm giving it an A. I heard an A plus. And I think ultimately, I'm gonna give it like a B. It was fun. The one thing that I enjoyed the most about the trade deadline was the surprise element of like the Jaren Jackson Jr. trade, the Anthony Davis trades. Those trades were out of nowhere, right? I said that if you are going to make John Morant available, it makes no sense to keep Jaren on the team. Literally, we know Jaren was going to be the guy traded and not John Morant. I'm sure that a trade happened in the deadline or the offseason and everything. And though we had rumors all season long about Anthony Davis, nobody pinpointed that the Washington Wizards were going to be the team to get in on the fun. I remember early in the season, there was so much Chicago Bulls, Anthony Davis buzz. The Bulls started off like 5-0. Like, oh, should they be buyers instead of sellers? AD did once upon a time say he wanted to play at home before his career is over. Is this the time? And I swear to you, I hated every time that popped on the timeline. I'm so happy we went the other direction, but ended up being the Washington Wizards, another not so great team buying in on the talents of Anthony Davis. But also, the one of the reasons why this trade deadline wasn't an A plus or an A for me is that a lot of the teams that are competing for the 2026 Larry O'Brien Trophy didn't do anything significant. A few weeks ago on this show, we did an episode where I did my updated contender ranking. This was January 26th, so just a few weeks ago. I'm going to read you the order I had a few weeks ago. The OKC Thunder, the Denver Nuggets, the Detroit Pistons, the New York Knicks, the San Antonio Spurs, the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Houston Rockets, the Boston Celtics, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and the Philadelphia 76ers. One thing that at least 8 or 9 of those teams have in common is they did either nothing or something very small. The Detroit Pistons added a guy in Kevin Huerter, who's probably the 7th or 8th man on the roster, and based on the few playoff experiences that he's had, he hasn't played amazing in that. So that 7th or 8th man may not even be there once we get to a potential game 7 for the conference. The New York Knicks added Jose Alvarado, which is a great get, but at the end of the day, it is a backup acquisition. You did lose Miles McBride, so I love the acquisition, but it wasn't enough for me to look at them, who I have as the 4th team on my contender ranking, and say, ooh, they did something to jump into the top 3. The only team of my top 10 that did something to jump up was the Cleveland Cavaliers. Because OKC made a move, but you can't move up from number 1. You know what I'm saying? They were number 1. The Cleveland Cavaliers are the only contender on my ranking to do anything of significance, anything that can make you say, that's interesting. Maybe they can win an extra playoff series or 2. So I was hoping for that. I was hoping that the Detroit Pistons, bought in a little bit more. I completely understand why they didn't, but I was hoping for that. I was hoping a little bit that the San Antonio Spurs might make a smaller move instead of the big old move that some people were expecting. The Minnesota Timberwolves did get better with the Ayo Dosunmu acquisition, but in my mind, Ayo on this team is more like a 6-man. Maybe he does start eventually, 6-man and an important playoff player, but not enough for me to say, they jumped from number 6 to number 3. So we were kind of missing some of that at this year's trade deadline. And I think a lot of that has to do with teams trying to make sure that their salary books are as clean as possible, because being in second apron team is detrimental in a lot of cases. So we only really had the Cavs as a team to take a big swing, and that was adding James Harden, who we'll talk about in a minute, with his debut with the Cleveland Cavaliers against the Sacramento Kings the other night. Another reason why this is maybe a B is because some of the bigger names that were moved, we probably won't see. And if we are going to see them, we won't see them in the capacity of the full team. Like Zubats, I don't know. He's away from the team. Congratulations to him and his wife. They brought in the baby basically a day before the trade deadline, which is like, greatest day of your life to become a father. And then I don't know what it ranks to move from California to Indiana. Maybe it ranks high because he's going to a team that in theory is going to compete for a championship next season. But we won't see that team really until next season. Right? Anthony Davis has already been confirmed that he's going to get shut down for the season. And though Jaren Jackson Jr. did also have his debut the other night, we won't see the full capacity of their team because instead of him starting alongside Walker Kessler, he started alongside Jusuf Nurkic. So a lot of the bigger names using the trade down line, it's like, oh, Luka's going to play next week, or so-and-so player is going to play in a couple games. Nah, not this time around. So I think that kind of tempers it a little bit. We also didn't get any what the F trades What is that GM doing? Unless you look at the Bulls, and some people have graded the deadline as a WTF. I'm not one of those people. I didn't think it was amazing, but I also don't think it was a WTF. So depending on how you look at the Bulls' moves, not many WTF moments, and I feel like every deadline we get a few of those. This time around, we got nothing. Majority of the moves that we saw were money-saving moves, trading away a player like Tyus Jones and some seconds to a team, and we just get under the luxury tax. The Celtics, though, they did get better by adding Vucevic, a guy we'll talk about in a little bit. Most of their deals were to mess with the tax, and that was the case, right? When you see small player, 12th man on the roster gets traded for a second-round pick or gets traded for the rights to a player that will never come over to the NBA, those are the money moves, So it's more of those than anything. The only trades, if I'm gonna rank them, and I think there was 29 trades total, I got 5 trades where a team traded with the interest of getting better today. Again, a lot of the trades end up being future views, right? The Wizards next season, in theory, should be a team that's competing for a playoff spot. Same thing with the Utah Jazz, at least competing. I'm not saying they're going to be in there, but competing for a playoff spot, which is valuable to the league in the long run. But today, those teams are taking the ass off. You feel me? Io to the Wolves is a trade to make the team better. Vooch to the Celtics is kind of a trade to make the team better. It was a position of need. They got that, but also it was a money move by going from a $27 million contract in Anthony Simons to a $21 million contract in Nikola Vucevic. Kobe White to the Charlotte Hornets is to get them better, even though he's dealing with an injury that Bulls fans knew about but didn't know it was enough for us to get the trade amended. Instead of getting 3 second-round picks, we got 2. Good job, AK. Jose Alvarado to the Knicks, again, is to get them better, and then James Harden to the Cavs. I didn't want to count Kevin Huerter. No disrespect to Kevin Huerter, but the Kevin Huerter to the Pistons is to get better, but So it was a B. In my mind, it was a B of a trade deadline, and that's not a bad thing necessarily, but it may be not the greatest thing either.
Hit subscribe for more news, highlights, and analysis from the NBA on NBC.